EA have just dropped Title Update 3 for FC 25. So, of course, you know that means version 3 of my realistic slider set is not going to be far behind. And with this most recent update, as well as some fixes to a handful of bugs, EA have also made some adjustments to the AI behavior. So ordinarily, I would be expecting some pretty significant changes to the gameplay. However, that isn't the case. The gameplay hasn't changed a massive amount since Title Update 2. So we're not going to be making any wholesale, any structural changes to the slider set, and instead it's mostly going to be tweaking, refining, and minor upgrades. One change that we can make is moving the sprint speed slider for both the user and the CPU down from 42 to 40. 40 was the value that I actually wanted to use after Title Update 2 in version 2 of my slider set, but it was just a little bit too slow. Now, however, 40 feels really smooth, especially when paired with the existing acceleration values of 48 for the user and 46 for the CPU. If this is the first time you've seen my FC 25 sliders, we do have a +2 discrepancy in favor of the user, just because the CPU teams this year are so much more alert, they are so much more on their toes, and with these values level, your players just don't have the same time to react that the CPU players do. We have some very minor changes to some of the error and speed values. So we have user shot error at 48, CPU shot error at 55, pass error we have 5 for the user and 50 for the CPU. Shot speed we have at 50 for the user and 34 for the CPU. Pass speed we have at 44 and 38. So as I said, just a couple of minor changes here, not only to smooth out some of the animations even further, not just to replicate aesthetically the speed of a real life game, but also to pair with that slightly reduced sprint speed slider as well. Injuries I currently have at 75 and 22 in terms of frequency and severity. But again, these are very much in flux. These are pretty much personal preference. They don't have a big impact on the gameplay, so you can tailor these to your liking. These are the values I'm currently testing. Again, we are pretty much trying to avoid the constant broken toe 3-month injuries and the bruised shoulder 5-day injuries. Still haven't quite found the balance there yet. We also have a slight adjustment to the goalkeeper ability, 78 for the user, 35 for the CPU at this current time. The CPU value is just so much lower than the user, simply because the CPU goalkeeper is better. The teams simply aren't treated equally in terms of their coding. I don't have an in-depth knowledge by any means of what goes on behind the scenes in terms of the coding in this game. All I have is my anecdotal experience of playing out the games. But the user goalkeeper is worse than the CPU goalkeeper. This is one way in which you do see that the teams are not treated equally. The same for run frequency as well, which we will get to in just a bit. I often have a discrepancy there because, again, the teams are coded differently. I said we wouldn't be making any big structural changes, but we have made a couple of minor structural changes. So marking has been increased from 60 up to 70 for both the user and the CPU. This is going to create a bit more of a tight battle in midfield. This is also very much going to pair with the line height, length, and width sliders. Those are things we haven't changed. That's what I mean by not making any big structural changes in terms of the shape of the game. Run frequency is another kind of structural slider value as well. And again, we've made some slight changes there. So run frequency for the user has come down to 65. Whereas run frequency for the CPU has now been increased to 85. So you'll be seeing a lot more forward runs by the CPU players, kind of breaking free from those player roles or from their ordinary positions in the formation to create attacking opportunities. This value, of course, does pair also with the build-up speed in the CPU sliders, which we'll be getting to in just a little bit. But one approach we are taking in this particular set in version 3 is going with a slightly higher run frequency for the CPU, but lowering the build-up speed slightly. So you get a bit more movement, a few more rotations in the final third, but the CPU isn't necessarily transitioning the ball forward as quickly as the runs are being made. So you still do get that build up through the midfield and across the back line, but there are also opportunities to create ahead of them. Line height, length, width, as I said, haven't changed. So you still want 35 for the height for both the user and the CPU, 40 for length, and 45 for the width. Same goes for fullback positioning. This remains from version 2, 25 for the user, 50 for the CPU. Power bar is entirely personal preference. And then first touch control error again remains from version 2. I still have this at 5 and 5 for the user and the CPU. However, I have mentioned before, this is kind of a secret hidden difficulty slider, essentially. If you want the game to be slightly more difficult, then you can raise the user first touch control error. So you might have this at 5 and 50 or 50 and 5 rather. If you want the game to be easier, do the opposite by raising the CPU first touch control error slider. This slider dictates a lot of different things, including success of challenges, particularly shoulder challenges, where the ball lands after attempted tackles or kind of lucky deflections, rebounds, that kind of thing. It adjusts jostling and things like that as well. It's not simply a first touch only slider. So you can kind of use this as a hidden difficulty kind of refining value. And then in terms of the user sliders, as I said, we have lowered build-up speed ever so slightly from version 2. So we have lowered that from 50 down to 45. Everything else, as far as I recall, remains the same. So you want tackle aggression at 99, build-up speed at 45, shot frequency at 68, first touch pass at 55, 70 for crossing, 55 for dribbling, and then 50 for skill move frequency. However, one thing that I did recommend in version 2, that I recommend again here in version 3, and that I have been utilizing in my own career mode saves, is not to have a static custom set, but instead create kind of a custom dynamic hybrid by setting not just individual values for each of these sliders, but instead a value range. So for example, with build-up speed, I think this is pretty much good anywhere from about 42 up to about 50. Maybe you could even go 40 to 50. So instead of setting one specific value like 45, set yourself a value range like 40 to 50. Do that for each of these individual sliders. Shot frequency, you can probably have anywhere from 60 to 70-ish. First touch pass, 50 to 60-ish. Crossing, 65 to 70. Dribble, I wouldn't go too much higher than 60. Skill move, I wouldn't go too much higher than 55. Then what you can do before each game is randomize these values within that range, and then you can input a fresh set of sliders based on those randomized values before each game. That way you get the benefit of dynamic because you get a fresh set of sliders for each game. So you're going to maximize the discrepancy, the differentiation between the CPU opponents that you play. However, you also ensure you're going to get a realistic game because you're defining the value ranges. You're never going to end up with build-up speed at 1 or at 99. It's only going to end up between 40 and 50. So maybe this is what that ends up looking like. You end up with perhaps tackle aggression at 99, build-up speed at 42, shot frequency at 70, first touch pass at 56, 60 for crossing, 50 for dribble, 51 for skill moves. So we've got a slightly different set of sliders. So the game is going to play out slightly differently. However, we haven't got a 1 to 99 spread. So we're still ensuring that our game is going to play out realistically because we've defined the range in which these sliders can change. And it might not seem like there's going to be a big difference between 42 and 45, for example, between 68 and 70. But that these values are fairly sensitive. It does make quite a big difference, particularly the build-up speed slider. And you're not just making one change, you're making several as well. So they're going to combine to create even more differentiation, and it's going to have a much larger impact than you might imagine, even if you're only changing each individual slider by a couple of ticks. The one thing I would mention is that tackle aggression I just have at 99. You still see too few fouls. The CPU is still not aggressive enough at 99. I want to max that out every single time. So I don't have a range for that one. I just have it at 99. I think skill move frequency, I actually just have set at 50 ordinarily as well. But again, this is going to be up to you. There's personal preference with all of these slider values. You can create your own ranges if you do want to take that particular approach. So as always, I will put the full list of sliders in the comments below, but here is the set in its entirety. And here are the CPU slider values as well, not just the individual specific values that I recommend, but also those value ranges. So just a quick update. Like I said, I don't think a massive amount has changed in terms of the gameplay between Title Update 2 and Title Update 3. However, I think the changes we have made for version 3 are definitely an improvement. I think Title Update 3 is a slight improvement on the gameplay as well. Those slight changes to the AI logic and things like that have resulted in some improved gameplay. And I think we've built on that with the new version of the slider set as well. So I hope they play out as well for you as they have been for me. Make sure you subscribe to the channel if you do want to be kept in the loop when version 4 drops. Make sure you check out my realistic Crystal Palace career mode featuring ChatGPT as well. We are just finishing up season 1 there, so we are heading into season 2 soon. I do use these sliders in my realistic Crystal Palace career mode save, so you can see how they play out in the episodes there. But that will do it for this one. Hope to see you in the next one. Take it easy.